Imagine a man who has spent his life fighting for love, only to have it all unravel in a single night. David Okoro, a taxi driver with a heart of gold, finds an abandoned baby in his car, a discovery that sets off a chain of events he never could have foreseen. As whispers of judgment and betrayal swirl around him, David is forced to confront a truth so devastating it threatens to destroy everything he holds dear. This is a story of resilience, redemption, and the unbreakable bonds that hold us together, even when everything falls apart. Dive into a tale that will leave you questioning the true meaning of family, love, and sacrifice. David Okoro was a man of unshakable resolve, shaped by a childhood that left deep scars. Raised in a home devoid of warmth, David experienced neglect and harsh treatment at the hands of his relatives after losing his parents at a young age. His days were filled with chores and punishments, and his nights were often spent dreaming of a life where love and kindness prevailed. From these difficult beginnings, David made a solemn promise to himself. When he became a father, he would break the cycle of cruelty and provide his children with the love he never received. Despite the adversity, David excelled academically. He was a bright student with an insatiable thirst for knowledge, often earning the admiration of his teachers. He graduated at the top of his class, fueled by the hope that education would be his ticket to a better life. However, the harsh realities of the job market in Nigeria left him disillusioned. Applications went unanswered, and interviews yielded empty promises. Determined not to give up, David tried his hand at various trades, from carpentry to street vending, but each venture seemed to falter under the weight of economic hardship. It wasn't until he scraped together enough savings to buy a second-hand taxi that he found a semblance of stability. The taxi business wasn't glamorous, but it provided a steady income and a sense of independence. During one of his shifts, he met Ada, a spirited woman with a warm smile and an unyielding optimism. Their connection was immediate, and over time, they built a relationship founded on mutual respect and shared dreams. David found in Ada not just a partner but a source of unwavering support, and together they envisioned a future filled with love and resilience. His wife, Ada, was the heart of their home, and their 3 children were his greatest treasures. But life had dealt them a harsh hand. Their youngest son, Chima, was battling sickle cell anemia, and the mounting medical bills were an ever-present shadow over their lives. One fateful evening, as the city lights blurred through his windshield, David heard a faint cry from the back seat. Pulling over, he turned to find a baby wrapped in a tattered blanket, abandoned and alone. Stunned, he glanced around, but the streets offered no clues to the child's origins. His instincts screamed to protect the innocent life, but he knew the discovery would draw suspicion. "Who would leave a baby in my car?" he muttered, his voice tinged with disbelief and concern. The next day, David reported the incident to the police, but instead of commendation, he found himself under scrutiny. The officers accused him of attempting to abandon his fatherly duties, insinuating that he was trying to escape responsibility for the child. Their threats loomed over him, forcing David into a difficult decision. Left with no choice, he took the baby home, dreading Ada's reaction. When he arrived, his wife's expression shifted between shock and unease. Her brows furrowed, and she took a cautious step back, her eyes darting between David and the swaddled infant in his arms. "David, what is this?" she asked, her voice laced with concern, suspicion, and a tinge of fear. David sighed heavily, his own exhaustion evident in the slump of his shoulders. "I found the baby in my taxi. Someone abandoned it there. I took it to the police, but they accused me of trying to abandon my own child. Ada, I had no choice. I couldn't leave the baby there." Ada's lips trembled as she stepped closer, peering at the small, helpless bundle. "David, do you know what this means? People will talk. They will say things about you, about us. How can we handle this? We already have so much on our plate." David reached out and took Ada's hands in his own, squeezing them gently. "I swear to you, I am innocent. I have done nothing wrong. We will find a way to clear this up, but we need to be careful. I need you to trust me." Tears welled up in Ada's eyes as she glanced back at the sleeping infant. A deep sigh escaped her lips before she finally nodded. "Then we need to seek guidance. We cannot make this decision alone." Together, they agreed to take the matter before the community rulers. The following morning, dressed in their best attire, they walked into the palace of the village elders, where the high chief sat in judgment. David recounted his ordeal, his voice filled with frustration and worry. The elders listened intently, exchanging glances before speaking. "A man cannot run from the truth," the high chief finally said. "If you are innocent, then let proof speak for you. Take a DNA test. It will reveal if this child is yours or not. Only then can you clear your name." David and Ada exchanged glances. Though anxious, they knew it was the only way to put suspicions to rest. "We will do it," David said firmly, his wife standing resolutely by his side. In the days leading up to their meeting with the elders, something unexpected happened. The abandoned child slowly wove himself into the fabric of their family. David's children, initially wary, soon became enchanted by their new companion. The baby's infectious giggles filled the home, and his tiny hands clung to them with trust and warmth. Even Chima, despite his frequent bouts of illness, found comfort in the child's presence, often reaching out to hold his hand or watch over him as he slept. Ada, though still hesitant, softened as she watched their children bond with the baby. She found herself soothing him when he cried and even humming lullabies at night. David, despite the pressure mounting outside their home, felt a deepening sense of attachment. He had saved this child, and in return, the child had brought an unexpected joy into their lives. However, the warmth of their household could not shield them from the storm brewing beyond their walls. The days following their meeting with the elders brought an onslaught of scrutiny. People whispered in hushed tones whenever David passed, their eyes filled with judgment. Others were less discreet, openly accusing him of bringing shame upon his household. Some claimed the child was a sign of David's infidelity, while others suggested he had taken in an abandoned curse. Elders from the village visited David multiple times, pressing him to complete the DNA test swiftly. "A man's reputation is everything," one of them warned. "Clear your name before it is too late." Ada, though initially hesitant, became David's strongest ally. She faced criticism from women in the marketplace who suggested that she was foolish for standing by him. But despite the harsh words, Ada held her head high, determined to protect her family from the storm that raged around them. In an unexpected twist, the community chiefs came forward with an offer. If the DNA test proved that David was not the child's father, they would take responsibility for the baby's upbringing. He would be raised among the elders and given a good life, free from struggle. The offer, though seemingly generous, sparked an unintended consequence. Several women came forward, claiming to be the child's mother. Each of them spun elaborate tales of lost love and tragedy, hoping to gain favor with the chiefs. However, their stories lacked consistency, and David and Ada saw through the deception. "This child is ours now," Ada declared firmly, her voice unwavering. "With or without your offer, we will raise him." David nodded, standing beside his wife with pride. "We never took him in for gain. We did it because no child deserves to be abandoned." Though their declaration was met with surprise, it also earned them admiration. Some in the village began to soften toward them, but the pressure for the DNA test remained. Amidst the chaos, the day for the DNA test arrived. David and Ada went to the hospital with the baby, prepared to settle the matter once and for all. But before the results could be processed, another revelation was about to shake their world. David received a call from the hospital, the same one that had handled Chima's blood transfusion. The doctor's voice was hesitant yet urgent. "Mr. Okoro, we need to discuss something regarding your blood test results." Suspense hung in the air, but for now, David's only concern remained the child in his care. Unbeknownst to him, the truth about his entire family was about to be rewritten. David sat in the doctor's office, his heart pounding like a war drum. The words echoed in his mind, refusing to settle. "Mr. Okoro, I need you to stay calm and listen carefully." The doctor's voice was measured, almost hesitant. He folded his hands on the desk and sighed. "We ran the routine tests for the transfusion, and something unusual came up. Initially, we thought it was a lab error, so we double-checked." The doctor sighed. "During your sickle cell son's transfusion, we noticed something concerning. Your blood wasn't compatible. It was rejected, David. That shouldn't have happened. David, your sickle cell son, he's not biologically yours." David felt a strange ringing in his ears. He gripped the armrest of the chair, his knuckles turning white. "That can't be right. Are you sure?" The doctor nodded solemnly. "I'm sure. I need you to understand that what I'm about to tell you is purely medical. There's no room for assumptions until more tests are done." David swallowed hard, his pulse quickening. "Doctor, just tell me." David blinked, his mind struggling to process. "What are you saying?" "I strongly advise you to take further tests. Please, David. For your own clarity." The floor beneath him seemed to disappear. His palms felt cold, his breath short. He barely remembered driving home. The house that had once been his sanctuary now felt foreign, like a place where ghosts whispered secrets he had been too blind to see. When David arrived home, his pulse hammering. "This must be a mistake," he said to himself. He stormed inside the compound, eyes scanning the compound for Ada. His mind swirled, but one thing was clear: he needed answers. Now. Ada was in the kitchen when he stormed in, his voice raw and trembling. "Tell me the truth, Ada. Tell me now." She turned slowly, her face pale. "David, please. No more lies." His voice cracked, and he clutched the table for support. "I did the test. Chima isn't mine. And now the doctors are telling me I should check our other children too. Tell me, Ada." Tears spilled down her cheeks as she dropped to her knees. "David. I'm so sorry." His chest tightened. The air in the room turned suffocating. "What do you mean?" She sobbed into her hands, her entire body shaking as she struggled to find her voice. "David, you don't understand what it was like. Your family, they kept pressuring us for a child. Every day, the whispers, the stares, the insults. They said I was barren, that I wasn't woman enough for you. It never stopped, David. The shame followed me everywhere." Her breath hitched as she looked up at him, eyes pleading. Years went by, and there was nothing. I prayed, I hoped, I cried myself to sleep. And then one day, I went to the doctor in secret. I needed answers. And, David. She swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. "The doctor told me you can't father children." David flinched as if struck, his breath catching in his throat. She reached for him, but he stepped back, shaking his head. "I wanted to tell you. I swear I did. But I was terrified. I thought if you found out, you would leave me. That you would hate me. And then, before I knew it, one lie turned into another, and another. It was never meant to be this way, David. I never wanted to hurt you. I was just so afraid of losing you." His breath caught in his throat. His vision blurred. David staggered back as though he had been struck. His own body betrayed him. His entire life had been a lie. His children, his pride, his joy, weren't his. He turned and walked out. David didn't know how far he drove. He only knew he had to get away. The road blurred before his eyes, his hands gripping the wheel as if letting go would shatter what little remained of his world. He left everything behind, his taxi, his home, his past. The only thing he carried with him was the unbearable weight of betrayal. When exhaustion finally claimed him, he found shelter in a distant town, renting a single, dimly lit room with nothing but a mattress and a window that let in the night air. It wasn't a home. It wasn't even a refuge. It was just a place to exist. Days passed in agonizing silence. He barely ate. He barely slept. He only lay on his back, staring at the cracked ceiling, hoping, praying, that the pain would dull. But it didn't. Memories tormented him. Chima's laughter. The way the baby curled his tiny fingers around David's thumb. His eldest daughter running to him, calling him Daddy with joy in her voice. Those moments had been real. The love he felt had been real. But now, he didn't know what was real anymore. He was a man unmade, a father without children, a husband without a wife. One night, he sat by the window, staring out at the unfamiliar streets. He thought about disappearing forever. Starting over. Becoming someone new. But could he truly leave them behind? Could he erase the years he had spent raising them, loving them? Did blood really matter more than the love he had poured into them? The questions gnawed at him, relentless, unforgiving. And no matter how much he tried, no answer brought him peace. Then, one evening, his phone rang. He let it buzz, his breath shallow, his fingers trembling over the screen. He didn't want to answer. He wasn't ready. But something deeper than pain, heavier than betrayal, rooted him in place, compelling him to pick up. A long silence stretched between him and the caller. Then, a small, fragile voice broke through the void. "Daddy, please don't leave us." His chest tightened. It was Chima. Weak. Barely audible. But it was him. David's throat burned. His vision blurred. He clutched the phone tighter, his heartbeat hammering in his ears. "Chima. Daddy. I don't feel so good. Mummy says I'll be fine, but she's lying. I can tell. I know when she's scared. Daddy, it hurts. Please come home. Daddy, are you still angry? Will you come home?" David pressed the phone to his ear, his throat tightening. "Chima. I miss you, Daddy," the little boy whispered. "We all do. Mummy cries every night. And the baby, he doesn't laugh like before." Tears slipped down David's face. His mind screamed at him to stay away, to protect himself from more pain. But his heart was breaking for the children he had raised. He wasn't their father by blood. But had he not held them through sleepless nights? Had he not taught them to walk, to read, to dream? Had he not loved them with every fiber of his being? Blood made a man a father, but love made him their dad. With a heavy heart, David turned the key in the ignition. He didn't know what waited for him back home. He didn't know if he could ever forgive Ada. But he knew one thing for certain: his children needed him. And he couldn't let them down. So he drove home, tears in his eyes, but his heart leading the way. As he approached the neighborhood, his phone buzzed with a message from the hospital. His hands trembled as he unlocked the screen. "David Okoro, you are now the legally registered father of the found child." His breath hitched, emotions swirling within him, relief, shock, an ache he couldn't quite name. The weight of his decision settled in his chest. He had left, but somehow, fate had bound him even tighter to this child, this family. His hands tightened on the steering wheel as he pulled into the familiar driveway. The house stood before him, unchanged yet transformed. The echoes of his absence lingered in the air. As he stepped out, he saw Ada standing at the doorway, her face weary, her eyes swollen from nights of crying. Yet, there was something else, a quiet strength, a desperate hope. She had kept everything together in his absence. She had cared for their children, for the baby, for the home he had nearly walked away from. From the corner of his eye, he noticed figures approaching. The kinsmen. The very men who had once questioned him now stood before him with quiet reverence. An elder stepped forward. "When we first heard, we doubted you. We whispered behind your back. But a father is not the one who gives life, it is the one who gives love. David, you have shown us the meaning of fatherhood. David, we honor our word. The reward we promised is yours. But more than that, we honor you as a father, not by blood, but by the love you have given." David swallowed hard, his heart twisting. He looked past them, towards the children playing in the yard, their laughter a bittersweet melody. Chima turned, his frail body swaying slightly before breaking into a run. "Daddy!" The dam inside him broke. He dropped to his knees just in time to catch the boy in his arms, holding him tighter than ever before. And in that moment, David knew this was his home. This was his family. And he would fight for them, no matter what. David stepped out of his taxi, taking in the home he had nearly abandoned. This time, he wasn't running. He was ready to face the truth and reclaim the love that had never truly left him.